Gunfire erupted, echoing through the alley. Officers dove for cover, glass shattered, and sirens wailed in the distance. In the chaos, one figure moved against all logic. A black female cop threw herself across the body of a handcuffed criminal. Bullets ripped the air, sparks flying from metal. Gasps erupted as her colleagues froze in disbelief. Why would she risk her badge, her life, for a man branded a killer? Was it betrayal, madness, or a secret truth buried deeper than anyone could imagine? If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on Justice Voice and turn on the notification bell. That way, every thrilling and surprising story will always reach you. Philadelphia had a way of looking older in the winter nights. The cobblestone streets of Old City, slick with ice and the pale shine of street lamps, seemed to whisper of centuries gone by. But on one particular night in the winter of 2011, those streets did not whisper, they roared with sirens, echoed with pounding footsteps, and trembled under the weight of something larger than history. Sergeant Maya Brooks sprinted through the narrow alleyways, her breath puffing into the freezing air like bursts of steam from an old train engine. The weight of her duty belt pulled on her hips, the cold metal of her service weapon pressed firmly in her hand, but none of it slowed her. Ahead of her, a man in a dark jacket stumbled, caught himself, and kept running. His name was Nathan Cole, a fugitive who had been on the run long enough to know every shortcut, every blind corner, and every crack in the city's skeleton. Red and blue lights painted the brick walls as police cruisers skidded into position at the far end of the block. Tires screeched. Officers shouted commands, but Nathan pushed harder, zigzagging between trash cans and rusted fences. His desperation was raw, almost feral, like a hunted animal refusing to be cornered. Maya's heart thudded so hard it rattled in her ears. The chase was dangerous, yes, but danger was not new to her. What was new, what set this night apart, was the gnawing instinct that there was more to Nathan Cole than a long rap sheet. Something about the way he ran, not just from them but from something else, unsettled her. Then it happened. From the shadows of a narrow side street came a sound sharper than the crack of ice splitting on a river, a gunshot. The bullet sang through the night, a high-pitched whistle that ended with a deadly intention. Nathan froze, eyes wide. In that fraction of a second, Maya didn't think she moved. She lunged forward, her body colliding with his, just as the round tore into the fabric of her shoulder. The force spun her sideways, a searing heat ripping through her uniform. She hit the ground hard, her weapon clattering across the cobblestones. Blood spread fast, soaking into the thick winter fabric, its warmth frightening against the bitter cold. Nathan stared down at her, stunned, his mouth opening and closing without words. Around them, the alley filled with the shouting of officers, the crunch of boots, the roar of sirens. But none of them had seen what Maya had seen, the flash from the hidden muzzle, the truth that this was no lucky shot. Someone had meant for Nathan Cole to die right there on that freezing street. Why? It was the first question that shot through Maya's pain-clouded mind. Not why she had thrown herself into the bullet's path that was instinct, the kind drilled into her since the academy. No, the real question was why someone wanted Nathan silenced so badly they had planted a gunman in the shadows. Maya gritted her teeth, pushing herself up even as pain flared down her arm. Her training screamed for her to stay down, to apply pressure to the wound, to wait for backup. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not when she realized that Nathan Cole's life wasn't just about crime and punishment. His life meant something else, something bigger. Her radio crackled. "Sergeant Brooks, are you hit? Do you copy?" She pressed the button with a bloodied hand, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Officer down. Shot fired from the north alley. Suspect still alive. Repeat, suspect still alive." Nathan shifted uneasily beside her, his chest heaving. He wasn't cuffed. He wasn't subdued. He could have bolted right then, disappearing into the labyrinth of Philly's old streets. But he didn't. His eyes, dark and wild, locked on hers with something that wasn't defiance. It was fear. Not fear of her, not fear of prison. Fear of something worse. The sound of more officers filled the street. Lieutenant Frank Doyle's heavy boots came into view first, his jaw clenched tight under the brim of his cap. "What the hell happened here?" he barked, eyes darting between Maya and Nathan. "Why is he still breathing?" Maya opened her mouth, but no answer came. How could she explain in the chaos of flashing lights and pressing hands on her wound that she had chosen, in an instant, to protect the very man they were chasing? The cold pressed in tighter, the sirens wailed louder, and somewhere deep inside, Maya knew this was only the beginning. What had just happened in that alley was not about one fugitive or one bullet. It was about something hidden beneath the surface of the city, something that would demand choices harder than anyone had ever warned her about. And for the first time in her career, Sergeant Maya Brooks felt the weight of a truth that could either destroy her or set her free. The emergency room at Jefferson Hospital hummed with fluorescent light and hurried footsteps. The smell of antiseptic clung to the air, sharp and unforgiving, mixing with the faint scent of old coffee from the nurse's station. Sergeant Maya Brooks sat upright on the hospital bed, her shoulder heavily bandaged, her uniform jacket folded neatly on the chair beside her. She hated being here, hated sitting still, hated the way the sterile room amplified the pounding questions in her mind. The bullet had torn through muscle but missed the bone. The doctors had called it a miracle. Maya didn't feel like she had witnessed a miracle. She felt as though she had been caught in the eye of a storm, one she knew hadn't passed yet. The door opened, and Lieutenant Frank Doyle stepped inside. His frame filled the doorway, broad-shouldered, square-jawed, his salt and pepper hair slicked back as if discipline itself had molded him. Doyle had been in the department for over 2 decades, long enough to see young officers rise and fall, long enough to know when something didn't add up. "You're lucky, Brooks," he said, his voice rough like gravel. "Another inch and you'd be on a slab right now instead of a bed." "I've heard that twice already," Maya replied, her tone flat. She didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the blinds that shut out the cold night beyond the window. Doyle took a step closer. "You want to tell me why the perp is still alive? Why you threw yourself in front of him?" Her jaw tightened. The question wasn't new, but hearing it from Doyle's mouth carried an extra weight. He wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was probing, pressing, digging for a reason to write her up, to question her judgment. "I followed instinct," she said. "The shot came from outside. Whoever pulled the trigger wasn't aiming for us. They wanted Cole dead," I reacted. Doyle narrowed his eyes. "You're telling me you risked your life to save a fugitive with half the city's burglaries pinned on him?" "Someone wanted him silenced," Maya said, her voice firmer now. "That means he's carrying something bigger than a string of burglaries. And if we lose him, we might lose the truth." Doyle let out a dry laugh, void of humor. "Truth. That's a noble word, Sergeant. But the truth I see is an officer who let her emotions cloud her judgment. Do you know what this looks like to the rest of the department? To the press? You protected a criminal. You've already got half the city baying for your badge." She turned her eyes on him then, steady and unflinching. "And what does it look like if we bury what he knows?" Doyle didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence between them was enough. He muttered something under his breath and left the room, his footsteps heavy down the hall. Maya leaned back, exhaling slowly. She was used to skepticism. Being one of the few black women in her division, she had faced more than her share of doubt and second-guessing. But this was different. This wasn't just about proving herself. This was about surviving long enough to make sure the truth saw daylight. By the time dawn crept over Philadelphia, gray and icy, Maya had been released from the hospital. She wore a thick coat that hid the sling around her shoulder, determined not to appear weak. Reporters had already gathered outside, microphones thrust forward, cameras clicking like cicadas. "Sergeant Brooks, why did you protect a known criminal? Is it true you're under investigation for misconduct? Was there a personal relationship between you and Nathan Cole?" The questions flew like stones, sharp and relentless. She didn't answer. She pushed through the crowd, her breath visible in the frigid air, and slid into the back of a cruiser that had been sent to pick her up. Officer Jason Miller sat behind the wheel. He looked barely out of college, his uniform still stiff with newness, his eyes wide as though every shift was still an adventure. But this morning, he looked shaken. "You okay, Sergeant?" he asked, his voice tentative. "I'm fine," she replied, though the pain in her shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. Jason hesitated. "I saw it, the shot. It wasn't us. It came from the alley. I heard it before you moved." Maya turned her head, studying him. He was nervous, chewing at his lower lip, but his eyes were honest. "And?" she asked softly. "And I know you saved him for a reason," Jason said. I I don't know what to do with that. You hold on to it, Maya said. One day, you'll need to decide if you serve the badge or the truth. Sometimes they're not the same. Jason swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The cruiser pulled away from the hospital, leaving the swarm of reporters behind. That evening, Maya visited her father. Harold Brooks lived in a modest brick row house in West Philly, the kind of home that carried the weight of stories in its walls. Inside, the smell of coffee and old wood lingered, familiar and comforting. Her father sat at the kitchen table, a stack of newspapers beside him, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. His hair was gray now, his back bent from years on the force, but his eyes still carried the sharpness of a man who had once been a fighter. You're all over the news, he said without looking up. Half of Philly thinks you lost your mind. Maya pulled off her coat and sank into the chair across from him. And the other half? The other half doesn't know what to think. They'll believe whatever the loudest voice tells them. He set the paper down and studied her. You took a bullet for a man the department calls a thief. That doesn't add up, baby girl, unless you know something they don't. She hesitated. Her father had been disgraced once, years ago, when he tried to blow the whistle on corruption within the department. His warnings had been buried, his career dismantled, his reputation stained. He knew better than anyone what it meant to carry truth that nobody wanted to hear. Nathan Cole has something, she said finally. Files, names, a whole system of rot buried under this city. Somebody wants him gone before he can talk. Her father's face darkened. You're telling me it's still happening. After everything, after what they did to me, it's still here. Maya nodded. I think it never left. I think it just went deeper. For a long time, Harold said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his voice low, heavy with warning. If you're right, they won't just come for him. They'll come for you too. They'll bury you the same way they buried me. And worse. I can't walk away, Maya said quietly. If I do, the truth dies with him. Her father's eyes softened, though they carried the weight of fear. Then you'd better be ready to fight smarter than I did, because this city doesn't forgive, and it sure as hell doesn't forget. That night, in a dimly lit apartment across town, Nathan Cole sat hunched over a battered laptop. His hands trembled as he entered a series of passwords, one after another, until a folder appeared on the screen. The title read, Liberty Bell Files. Dozens of documents filled the folder: bank transfers, coded messages, photographs of uniformed officers shaking hands with men whose faces were blurred in secrecy. Nathan scrolled through them, his jaw tight, his body tense. The files were his bargaining chip, his protection, his curse. And now, because Sergeant Maya Brooks had thrown herself into the line of fire, those files might finally see the light of day. But in the dark corner of his room, a burner phone buzzed. He picked it up, his heart sinking at the number flashing across the screen. He knew who it was. He knew what it meant. The ferryman is still looking, the voice said when he answered. You can't hide forever. Oh. Nathan hung up, his pulse racing. He glanced at the Liberty Bell files again, the digital weight of a truth that could topple men of power. He knew then that Maya Brooks wasn't the only one who had stepped into a storm. He was in it too, and storms like this had a way of sweeping everything away. Snow fell lightly on Philadelphia, dusting rooftops and softening the hard outlines of the city. By morning, the streets glistened under a thin coat of ice. Sergeant Maya Brooks walked into the police administration building, with her collar pulled high, her injured shoulders stiff beneath her coat. She was expected at Internal Affairs, and she knew what awaited her there. Suspicion. The conference room looked more like a courtroom. Two investigators sat across from her, pens ready, the little red light of a recorder blinking between them. Lieutenant Frank Doyle stood by the wall, arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. State your name, one investigator said. Sergeant Maya Brooks. You placed yourself between a fugitive and a bullet, the man continued. Why? Maya kept her voice steady. The shot didn't come from us. It came from the alley. Someone wanted Nathan Cole dead, not arrested. I reacted. The younger investigator frowned. Do you have any prior connection to Cole? No. And your evidence that the shot came from an outside party? Angle, timing, flash, Maya replied. Experience tells me it wasn't ours. The room fell silent. Doyle shifted but said nothing. The interview dragged on: reports, radio calls, procedure. At the end, They placed her on administrative review. A neat phrase, but Maya knew what it meant. Her future on the force now dangled by a thread. Out in the hall, she caught whispers. Some colleagues stared, others muttered under their breath. On a break-room TV, a pundit debated whether she was a hero or an accomplice. A grainy body cam still made it look like she was shielding Cole on purpose. Lies always traveled faster than truth. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She stepped outside into the cold. "Sergeant Brooks?" a woman's voice asked. "Ava Ramirez, freelance reporter. I covered your father when he tried to expose corruption years ago. I've been following your case." "I don't have a case," Maya said flatly. "Then you have a story. And I think your fugitive isn't just running from the police. I've traced payments, large ones, wired to a shell company the night you were shot. That money is tied to a former cop now working private security. You know what that sounds like?" "Contract killing," Maya muttered. "Exactly. Meet me at Mel's on Passyunk. 1 hour. The waffles are awful. The truth isn't." Maya considered. Internal affairs would keep her boxed in. Ava was reckless, but she had leads. "Fine," she said. Mel's diner was straight out of another era, chrome trim, cracked vinyl booths, the smell of burnt coffee. Ava sat waiting, notebook open, eyes sharp behind a casual smile. "Thanks for coming," she said, as Maya slid into the booth. "Here's what I've got. Keystone Protective Services private outfit run by a disgraced ex-cop wired money to Liberty Consolidated Holdings. No employees, just a P.O. box. The second transfer happened the same time you were in that alley." Maya listened. "Which means someone knew where Cole would be before the chase began." Ava nodded. "And they hired someone to finish the job. You've heard of the Ferryman?" Maya's eyes darkened. "Only whispers. A ghost people pay to disappear problems." Ava leaned in. "If Cole really has files that could expose corruption, the Ferryman's after him, which means whoever hired him is high up. Too high for me to print blind." "Keep digging," Maya said. "But if you find a badge number, call me before you publish." Ava smiled. "Deal. Oh, and one more thing. Rumors are circulating online, fake photos of you and Cole. They're building a narrative you can't control." "Figures," Maya said. "If you can't kill someone, kill their name." She left the diner with a sour taste that wasn't just from the coffee. On the street, she spotted an old Liberty Bell poster at a bus stop. The crack in the bell stared back at her, broken, but still ringing. Her phone buzzed again. Officer Jason Miller's nervous voice spilled through the line. "Sergeant, I'm at the Market Frankfurt line station. I think I just saw the guy from the alley. He's watching the platform like he's waiting for someone." "Stay visible. Don't approach. I'm on my way," Maya ordered. By the time she arrived, Jason stood near the ticket machines, eyes wide. He nodded toward a man in a peacoat and knit cap. The man wasn't watching the trains. He was scanning faces, every movement too precise, too deliberate. "That's him," Jason whispered. Maya studied the figure, shoulders too still, hands hidden in deep pockets, a predator pretending to be ordinary. When the man turned toward the stairs, their eyes met briefly in the glass reflection of the station shelter. He held her gaze, then walked past with the faintest smirk. Jason swallowed hard. "Was that him?" "If it isn't," Maya said, "then he knows who island." Maya's pulse still raced as she drove home through snow-slick streets. The city looked calm under its white blanket, but she knew better. Somewhere out there, money was moving, lies were spreading, and the ferryman was still hunting. And she, with a wound still healing, had become both a shield and a target. For the first time since the bullet tore through her shoulder, Maya wondered if she'd stepped into a fight that could end the same way her father's had buried under silence. But another thought cut through the fear, as steady as her heartbeat. If she walked away, the truth would die, and she wasn't ready to let that happen. The small office smelled faintly of dust, hymnals, and the faint tang of candle wax. Reverend Samuel Price set the 2 cups of water on the desk and stepped back, his broad figure framed in the doorway. "5 minutes," he said, his voice low but firm. "That's all the quiet I can promise you." "Oh." Maya Brooks nodded, her eyes still on the laptop's glow. Nathan Cole sat across from her, his hands restless, his knee bouncing beneath the desk. He looked like a man who had carried too many secrets too long, and now those secrets were afire in his pockets. She scrolled through folder after folder, each one another blow to her gut. Expense reports marked with falsified codes, Photos of officers at private events with men who didn't belong anywhere near law enforcement, overtime logs showing patterns so obvious it was almost insulting. It was a tapestry of rot. And yet, what hit Maya hardest wasn't the corruption itself she had known in her bones, it was there, but the sheer carelessness of the men who thought no one would ever shine a light. "This is enough to burn a whole precinct," she whispered. Nathan leaned forward. "Not just a precinct, a network. The captain who signs off on those reports, he's not alone. Keystone Protective is just a storefront. The real players sit higher, in offices where people don't ask what uniform they used to wear. If you go after one, you'll miss the others." Maya glanced up at him. His eyes were bloodshot, but steady. He wasn't lying, not now. "Then why give it to me? Why not keep running? Sell it to the highest bidder." "'Cause running's done," Nathan said simply. "And the highest bidder is already paying someone to put me in the ground." His jaw tightened. "You jumped in front of that bullet, Sergeant. That makes you the only person I've got left who hasn't tried to trade my life for a payday." Reverend Price cleared his throat gently. "You don't have to carry this cross alone, Maya. But if you do carry it, understand it's heavier than you think." She closed the laptop, the weight of it suddenly immense. "We need to move you," she said, "somewhere safer than this." Nathan shook his head. "There's no safe. Not with the ferryman on me. You don't outrun a man like that. You buy time, maybe. That's all." The Reverend laid a hand on Maya's shoulder, the warmth of his palm grounding her. "Sometimes time is all you need for truth to find its way out. The question is, can you protect it long enough?" Before Maya could answer, the sound of tires crunching on ice outside made all three heads snap toward the window. A car door slammed. Then another. The muffled thud of boots approached, heavy and sure. Nathan's face drained of color. "They found me." Maya moved fast, slipping the laptop into her bag and pulling her service pistol free with her good hand. Pain flared through her injured shoulder, but she forced it down. She glanced at the Reverend. "Back door?" He nodded. "Through the choir room, out to the alley." The first knock hit the front door, 3 sharp raps that didn't sound like any parishioner she'd ever known. Reverend Price raised his voice, calling out, "Church is closed. Come back Sunday." The response was silence, then the faint scrape of metal against lock. Maya swore under her breath. "Move," she ordered. They slipped into the back corridor, the Reverend guiding them with the quiet efficiency of a man who had walked this church blind 1,000 times. Stained glass windows cast fractured colors across the floor, holy light fractured into jagged shards. The choir room smelled of polish and dust, the piano looming like a sentinel. The rear door groaned as Maya pushed it open. Cold air rushed in, biting their skin. The alley stretched narrow and dark, steam rising from a nearby grate. "Go!" Maya hissed, shoving Nathan ahead. They had just stepped into the alley when a figure appeared at the far end. A man in a pea coat, knit cap pulled low, his head tilted slightly as though listening to music only he could hear. Even from 50 feet away, Maya felt the hair on her neck rise. The ferryman. He didn't raise a weapon. He just stood, hands in his coat pockets, body still as stone, watching, measuring. Nathan froze. "God help us," he whispered. "Run!" Maya snapped, shoving him toward the opposite end. The ferryman began to walk, slow, deliberate, the crunch of his boots on snow, loud in the narrow alley. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. Predators like him always knew their prey would panic. Maya raised her weapon, her hand steady, despite the burn in her shoulder. "Not tonight," she muttered. The ferryman stopped. For a long, tense heartbeat, their eyes locked across the distance. His head tilted again, and a faint curl touched his lips, half amusement, half warning. Then, as if some unseen signal had called him off, he turned and slipped back into the shadows, disappearing as silently as he had arrived. Nathan sagged against the wall, trembling. Why didn't he take the shot? "Because he doesn't miss," Maya said grimly. "If he wanted you dead here, you'd already be bleeding. He's waiting, watching, choosing his ground." The Reverend crossed himself, whispering a prayer. "Evil walks patient steps." "How?" Maya adjusted the strap of her bag, the laptop heavy against her side. "Then we don't wait. We strike first. These files don't sit in the dark anymore. We put daylight on them before the ferryman decides the time is his." She looked down the alley where the assassin had vanished, her jaw set. For the first time since the bullet tore through her shoulder, she wasn't just bracing for survival, she was preparing for war. The following morning dawned gray and raw, the kind of Philadelphia morning where the river wind cut straight through your coat. Maya Brooks sat in the corner booth of a diner on Walnut Street, her injured shoulder propped against the wall for support. A laptop bag rested beside her, its weight heavier than the steel of her service weapon. Inside were the Liberty Bell files, and with them the power to topple men who thought themselves untouchable. Ava Ramirez slid into the booth across from her, shaking off the cold and ordering coffee with a raised hand. She looked tired but sharp, her notebook already in hand. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said. "Neither did you," Maya replied. "Touché." Ava leaned in. "Tell me what you found." Maya opened the laptop and showed her the folders, scrolling quickly through expense reports, photographs, overtime logs. Ava's eyes widened as the scope revealed itself. "This isn't just dirty overtime," she whispered. "It's contracts, payouts, blackmail material. This is systemic. Keystone is just the front end of a whole machine." "Exactly," Maya said. "And the Ferryman is part of that machine. He's the knife they use when paper trails aren't enough." Ava's pen scratched across her notebook. "If we publish this raw, it'll be dismissed as doctored or fabricated. We need corroboration. Testimony. Someone inside willing to confirm." Maya thought of Jason Miller, the rookie with too much honesty still burning in him. "I may have someone," she said, "but bringing him in could destroy his career before it starts." "Careers grow back," Ava replied. "Truth doesn't once it's buried." Before Maya could answer, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Jason. "Meet me at the Precinct lot. Urgent." She glanced at Ava. "Looks like he just volunteered." The Precinct lot was half empty when Maya arrived. Jason leaned against his cruiser, his face pale under the weak morning light. He looked like a man who had spent the night wrestling with something too large for sleep. "I can't stay quiet anymore," he blurted when she approached. "I saw the Ferryman, Sergeant. I know what I saw, and if they bury this, then I'll be the next to shut up or disappear." Maya rested a hand on his arm. "Slow down. You're right, and you're brave. But you need to understand once you speak, there's no going back. You'll be a target." Jason nodded, jaw set. "Then I guess I'll find out what kind of cop I really am." Maya felt a swell of pride, mixed with fear. The kid reminded her of herself, years ago, before the job had taught her how high the stakes could go. "All right," she said softly. "We do this together. We don't let them write the ending." By evening, Maya, Ava, and Jason gathered in Ava's small apartment on South Street. The place was cluttered with papers, sticky notes, and the hum of 2 laptops glowing on the table. The Liberty Bell files sat open between them, digital proof of rot too deep to deny. Ava tapped her pen against the table. "We've got 3 options," she said. 1. I run the story straight to print, no filter. Fast, loud, messy. 2. We hand the files to a federal contact. Let them run an official investigation, but risk the whole thing getting swallowed in red tape. 3. We orchestrate a public reveal, live, with testimony ready to back it. High risk, but undeniable. Jason looked nervous. "Public? Like press conference?" "Bigger," Ava said. "Think broadcast. Once it's out, it can't be pulled back." Maya rubbed her temple, weighing the choices. Every option carried danger. If we go public, we have to be airtight. No gaps, no doubt. We'll need Reverend Price. His word carries weight in this city. And my father, he's been waiting 10 years for someone to listen. Jason swallowed. "And me." Maya studied him. His eyes trembled, but his chin didn't waver. He was ready to stand. "Yes," she said. "And you." Ava leaned back, exhaling. "Then it's settled. We plan for daylight. But be ready once word gets out, they'll come for all of us." And come they did. That night, as Maya drove home, she noticed the headlights in her rearview mirror. Too steady, too close. She took 3 turns through side streets, but the car followed, a dark sedan with tinted windows. Finally, she pulled into a gas station, her hand brushing the grip of her weapon as she stepped out. The sedan slowed, then rolled past without stopping. Just a warning. Just enough to say, "We see you." Maya's heart hammered, but she forced herself to stand tall, to finish pumping her gas, to look like she wasn't rattled. She knew better, this was only the beginning. Later, in her father's kitchen, the old man listened as she explained the plan. Harold Brooks sat in silence for a long time, his weathered hands folded on the table. "You know what this means, don't you?" he said finally. "They'll smear you, they'll try to break you, and if that doesn't work, they'll send someone who doesn't miss." "I know," Maya said. "Then promise me one thing." His voice cracked, just a little. "Promise me you won't let them bury you like they buried me. If you fall, make sure the truth stands taller." Maya reached across the table and gripped his hand. "I promise." For the first time in years, she saw something flicker in her father's eyes, a spark that looked a little like hope. The stage was set. The Liberty Bell files would not stay hidden. The ferryman was still out there, circling like a wolf, but Maya knew the only way forward was through. As she drove back to her apartment, the city lights flickering against the winter sky, Maya whispered to herself the words she had spoken in the hospital. Justice doesn't choose sides. Justice chooses truth. And this time, she would see it through no matter what it cost. The plan began to take shape in whispers and scribbled notes. Maya, Ava, Jason, and Reverend Price met quietly in the church basement, the air heavy with incense and old stone. Folding chairs surrounded a scarred wooden table, the Liberty Bell files glowing faintly on Ava's laptop like a lantern in a cave. Reverend Price folded his hands. "If you want daylight, you'll have it. My congregation trusts me. We can call a gathering that will draw cameras and reporters. No one will expect a sermon to turn into a storm." Ava leaned forward. "Perfect. A live event, streamed from multiple phones. Once it's out, it can't be buried. Even if someone tries to shut the building down, the story will already be in the bloodstream." Jason shifted nervously. "And the ferryman? He won't sit and watch while we pull this off." Maya met his eyes. "He'll come. Count on it, which means we'll need protection and backup plans if things go wrong." Reverend Price nodded. "Then we'll treat it like a revival service. Doors open, people welcome, and no shortage of eyes watching. Evil prefers shadows. It hates crowds." 2 days later, the pressure began. Maya returned to her apartment to find her front door slightly ajar. Her weapon drawn, she stepped inside cautiously. The place looked untouched until she noticed a single item on the kitchen counter. Her service badge, neatly polished, laid on top of a folded sheet of paper. The note read in block letters, "Stand down or you bleed next." Her stomach clenched, but she forced her hands steady. This was no bluff. The ferryman, or someone working with him, had been inside her home. Close enough to leave a warning, close enough to remind her how easily the line between hunter and hunted could blur. She called Ava. "They've marked me. We move faster." "Then we announce tomorrow," Ava said. "No more waiting." That night, Jason sat in his car outside his parents' row house, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. He had rehearsed what he would say, the testimony he'd give. But beneath the words was fear, the fear that he was still just a rookie, too green to stand against the machine that raised him. His phone buzzed. A new message. "We know where your mother shops. Choose wisely." Jason's hands trembled. He almost called Maya, almost begged off. But then he remembered the look on her face when she had told him. Sometimes the badge and the truth don't stand in the same place. He deleted the message, shoved the phone in his pocket, and whispered, "I'm in this to the end." The morning of the reveal arrived raw and cold, wind whistling through the cracks in the church windows. Reverend Price's congregation gathered, drawn by word of a special service. Cameras from local news outlets rolled in, reporters curious about the sudden attention. Inside the vestry, Maya adjusted the sling on her injured arm. Ava set up her laptop at the pulpit, ensuring the files were queued and ready. Jason paced, his uniform freshly pressed, his badge gleaming, though his eyes betrayed his nerves. Reverend Price placed a steady hand on the young officer's shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing tall with fear riding on your back. Remember that." Jason nodded, his breathing evening out. But outside, in the shadow of a parked van across the street, the ferryman waited. Knit cap pulled low, peacoat buttoned tight. He leaned against the bumper as if he were just another passerby. He lit a cigarette, inhaled, and watched the church doors through the smoke. Inside his pocket rested a suppressed pistol. His orders were clear: silence Nathan Cole and anyone who tried to give him a voice. But Ferryman was patient. He didn't rush jobs. He liked the moment before the strike, when his prey still believed they were safe. He tilted his head slightly, listening to the soundless rhythm only he could hear. Then he stepped off the curb. Maya spotted him first through a side window. Her pulse spiked. "He's here," she whispered to Ava. Ava's eyes widened. "What do we do?" "Stick to the plan," Maya said, checking her weapon. "We hold our ground. The only way he wins is if we silence ourselves." Jason swallowed hard. "Then let's give the city something worth hearing." The church bell rang once, its echo filling the street. Inside, the crowd hushed as Reverend Price stepped to the pulpit, Bible in hand. But when he opened his mouth, he spoke not of scripture but of truth. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his deep voice carrying to every corner, "we are gathered not just in worship today, but in witness. The time has come to bring into the light what has long been hidden in shadow." Gasps rippled through the pews as Ava connected her laptop to the projector. Images appeared on the wall, documents, photos, the Liberty Bell files spilling their secrets. The room buzzed, reporters fumbling with cameras, pens racing across paper. Maya stood at the side, scanning the crowd, every nerve alert. Jason stepped forward, voice trembling at first, then growing stronger. "I was there the night Sergeant Brooks took a bullet. I saw the shot. It wasn't us. It came from the alley. Someone wanted Nathan Cole dead, and I'll swear that on my badge." "Ho!" The congregation erupted, some in shock, others in applause. And in the back of the church, the ferryman slipped inside, silent as a shadow, hand in his coat pocket. The church air grew heavy as the projector cast the Liberty Bell files across the wall, rows of figures, names, signatures, and photographs that painted corruption in undeniable strokes. Murmurs rose in waves. Reporters scribbled furiously, some already live streaming. It was the kind of storm you couldn't call back once it broke. Maya Brooks stood near the aisle, her good hand resting on the butt of her service weapon. She scanned every face, every movement, and then she saw him, the ferryman. He slipped into the back pew like a parishioner late to worship, his knit cap low, his peacoat blending into the shadows. His stillness was what gave him away, too calm, too measured in a room alive with shock and noise. His eyes didn't wander over the documents on the wall. They locked on one target. Nathan Cole, seated in the front row beside Reverend Price. Maya's pulse hammered. She touched her earpiece, whispering to Jason, who stood near the pulpit. "He's here. Back pew, left side. Don't panic." Jason's reply came quick, his voice thin with nerves. "What do we do?" "We buy time," Maya answered. "Keep the cameras rolling. The more eyes, the harder it is for him to move." At the pulpit, Ava Ramirez raised her voice above the murmurs. "These files are not allegations. They're documented proof. Overtime fraud, payoffs, collusion with private security firms, all leading to a shadow network that has operated for years under your noses." The crowd gasped as images of officers shaking hands with known criminals flickered across the wall. The scandal was no longer rumor. It was visible truth. Reverend Price stepped forward, his voice booming like a bell. "This city deserves justice, and justice begins with truth." Applause broke out, mixed with shouts of anger and disbelief. Reporters surged closer, microphones thrust forward. Maya risked another glance at the ferryman. He had shifted slightly, one hand dipping into his coat pocket. The world seemed to slow. "Jason," she hissed. "Move closer to Cole, now." The young officer obeyed, slipping from the pulpit to stand beside Nathan, his jaw tight, his eyes darting nervously toward the back. The ferryman rose, smooth, unhurried, his head tilted, that eerie signature gesture, as though listening to a rhythm only he could hear. The crowd barely noticed everyone's eyes were on the files blazing across the wall. Maya didn't hesitate. She drew her weapon, the sound sharp in the vaulted space. "Police!" she barked, her voice cutting through the noise. "Hands where I can see them!" Gasps erupted. The congregation turned, eyes wide, as the ferryman froze mid-step. For a moment, the church was utterly silent, the kind of silence that feels alive. Then, slowly, deliberately, the ferryman raised his hands, but his eyes, cold, predatory, never left Nathan Cole. "Everybody down!" Jason shouted, shoving Nathan behind the pulpit. Reporters ducked, people screamed. the pews scraping against the floor as the crowd scrambled for cover. The ferryman moved fast. In a blur, his hand dipped back into his coat and came out with a suppressed pistol. The first shot cracked through the church, muffled but deadly. Maya fired back, diving behind a pew, her shoulder blazing with pain. Splinters flew. Stained glass rattled in its frames. Reverend Price pulled Ava to the ground as bullets tore through the pulpit wood. Jason returned fire, his face pale but determined. His round struck close enough to make the ferryman duck, buying precious seconds. The church was chaos, shouts, gunfire, the echo of footsteps on stone. But through it all, cameras kept rolling. Every phone, every reporter's lens captured the assassin's face, the proof of his existence broadcast live. Pinned behind a pew, Maya yelled toward Jason, "Keep him away from Cole." Jason nodded, shifting to shield Nathan, his weapon trembling but steady. Maya gritted her teeth, blood warm on her bandaged shoulder, and popped up long enough to squeeze off 2 more shots. One clipped the ferryman's arm, making him stumble. He didn't cry out. He didn't falter. He simply tilted his head again, eyes narrowing, and adjusted his grip. He was a professional. Pain didn't matter. The job did. Reverend Price suddenly rose, his towering frame standing in defiance. "This is a house of God," he thundered, voice booming through the chaos. "You will not bring death into this sanctuary." For an instant, even the ferryman hesitated, as if the sheer authority of faith had pierced the madness. Maya seized the moment. She charged forward, slamming into the ferryman with her good shoulder. They crashed into a pew, wood splintering under their weight. His pistol clattered across the floor, spinning out of reach. But his hands were like iron. He grappled her, his face inches from hers, breath calm, eyes dead. "You can't stop the river," he hissed. "It always carries the truth away." Maya snarled back, forcing his arm against the wood. "Then maybe this time, the river drowns you." She drove her knee upward, breaking his hold long enough to slam his head against the pew edge. He sagged, dazed, and Jason was there in a heartbeat, weapon trained. "Don't move," the rookie shouted, voice shaking but loud. The ferryman stilled, blood trickling from his temple, his eerie smile fading into something colder. By the time the first patrol units burst into the church, the assassin was disarmed, his coat torn, his legend of untouchable silence broken. Reporters swarmed, their cameras capturing everything: the files on the wall, Jason's testimony, and now the ferryman himself in custody. For the first time, Maya allowed herself a breath. She holstered her weapon, glanced at Jason, and nodded. The rookie had stood his ground. Nathan Cole, trembling but alive, whispered, "You just painted a target the size of this city on yourselves." Maya looked around at the congregation, the reporters, the flashing cameras. "Good," she said, her voice firm, "because now the whole city is watching. And they'll know exactly who's pulling the strings." That night, headlines blazed across Philadelphia. Whistleblower cop, rookie officer, and local pastor expose police corruption, assassin captured on live stream. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot, but the truth had been dragged into the daylight, and for once, it refused to be buried. And for Maya Brooks, that was enough to fight another day. The morning after the church erupted in chaos, Philadelphia awoke to a new reality. The ferryman long whispered about, never confirmed, was in police custody. Footage from dozens of phones played on every news channel. The gunman's cold expression, the suppressed weapon in his hand, the moment Maya Brooks drove him into a pew. The city buzzed with shock, outrage, and a dangerous hunger for answers. Maya sat in an interrogation room at federal headquarters, her injured shoulder throbbing under the fluorescent lights. Across the table sat 2 FBI agents: Agent Connolly, gray-haired and careful, and Agent Vega, younger, sharp-eyed, with a notepad already half-filled. Connolly cleared his throat. "Sergeant Brooks, first, you should know the Department of Justice has opened a formal investigation. These files, the Liberty Bell files, are being processed right now by our forensic team." "Good," Maya said flatly. "But understand this, the ferryman wasn't acting alone. He's a piece of a larger machine, and that machine still has its claws in this city." Vega leaned forward. "You believe members of your department were complicit?" Maya met her eyes. "I don't believe it. I know it. Those overtime logs, those signatures, they weren't accidents. And the captain who approved them. He's not just corrupt, he's connected. Connolly nodded slowly. We'll need your testimony. And the rookie Miller. He's willing to speak, but he's young, vulnerable. If you push him too hard, Maya cut him off. Don't worry about Miller. He's stronger than you think. Worry about keeping him alive long enough to testify. Meanwhile, in a quiet wing of the federal holding facility, the ferryman sat alone in his cell. He had refused to give his name, his history, even his fingerprints. When agents tried, he smeared the ink, smirked, and hummed tunelessly. His silence was unnerving, his calm more threatening than rage could ever be. One guard whispered to another, "Feels like he's just waiting." And he was, because somewhere outside those walls his employers were already moving. That evening, Ava Ramirez hammered away at her keyboard in her cluttered apartment, the Liberty Bell files open on one screen, live news feeds on another. Her article draft grew by the hour, a chronicle of corruption, betrayal, and the courage that had cracked the silence. But the threats had started. Anonymous emails. Fake news dies first. Envelopes slid under her door with newspaper clippings circled in red ink. She told herself it was just intimidation, but when she saw a dark sedan idling across from her building for the third night in a row, her chest tightened. She called Maya. "They're watching me. I can feel it." Maya's voice was steady. "Then you're hitting the right nerves. Don't let them shake you. Tomorrow, you meet with the feds. Hand them everything. After that, it's out of their reach." "Out of their reach?" Ava said bitterly. "Or deeper into it? You've been a cop long enough to know power doesn't go quietly." Maya didn't argue. She simply said, "I'll walk you to the meeting myself." Jason Miller spent that same night with his mother, who brewed him tea, and fussed over his uniform like he was still in high school. She didn't know about the threats. He didn't have the heart to tell her. But when he stepped outside to clear his head, his phone buzzed again. This time no words, just a video clip. His mother, filmed secretly at the grocery store, pushing a cart down the aisle. Jason's throat went dry. He understood now. This wasn't about silencing him, they wanted to break him, to force him into silence himself. He deleted the video, fists trembling, and whispered into the cold air, "You won't scare me off." But he wasn't sure if he believed it. The next morning, the city's newspapers screamed headlines. Ferryman captured. Who hired the ghost? Liberty Bell files rock police department. Federal investigation expands City Hall silent. Maya, Ava, Jason, and Reverend Price met again in the church basement, the same table where they'd hatched their plan. This time, exhaustion clung to all of them. Reverend Price poured coffee into styrofoam cups. "Truth's out in the open, but that doesn't mean it's safe. You've poked a hornet's nest, and hornets don't forgive." Ava set down her notebook, her eyes shadowed. "The files are public now, but the names at the top, the ones with real power, they're still untouched. They'll fight back, harder than before." Jason stared into his cup. "I can handle threats, but if they come after my family, they already have," Maya said gently. "But that's how you know you're over the target. Fear is their only weapon. If you let it work, they win." Reverend Price leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "So you keep standing. You keep speaking. Because if you falter now, the truth dies with you. And God help us all if that happens." That night, news broke that shook them all. The captain named in the Liberty Bell files one of the key signatories, the man who had enabled Keystone's grip, was found dead in his car. Gunshot wound. Ruled a suicide. Maya read the report with a hard, sinking certainty. "They're tying off loose ends," she said. "They'll make it look like guilt, like he couldn't live with it. But we know better. Someone's cleaning house." Jason's voice cracked. "If they can get to him, what about us?" Maya looked out the window, the city lights flickering in the distance. "Then we don't hide. We move forward, faster than they can erase us." She turned back to the group, her jaw set, her eyes burning with resolve. "The files were just the beginning. Now we dig deeper. We follow the money, the contracts, the names behind the names. Because until we cut out the root, this city will never be clean." Ava closed her notebook with a snap. "Then let's get to work." Far across the city, in a high-rise office lit by a single lamp, a man in a tailored suit watched the news footage on repeat. The ferryman's face. The chaos in the church. Maya Brooks standing defiant with a gun in her hand. He sipped his whiskey slowly, then made a single call. Plan B, he said into the receiver. If they won't be quiet, then make them irrelevant. No more half measures. He hung up, the faint smile on his lips colder than winter. Philadelphia's streets buzzed with speculation. News vans crowded outside federal offices, anchors repeating the same questions. Who hired the ferryman? Who else was on the payroll? For a moment, it seemed as though the tide of public opinion had shifted in Maya Brooks' favor. She was painted as a hero in headlines, the sergeant who took a bullet for truth. But power never cedes ground without a fight. By the third day after the church shooting, a different kind of story began to creep into the airwaves. Sources question authenticity of Liberty Bell files. Anonymous leaks suggest Sergeant Brooks altered documents. Motive? Revenge for father's past scandal. Maya sat in her father's living room, watching the smear unfold on the evening news. Harold Brooks leaned forward in his recliner, fists clenched. They're twisting it. Just like they twisted me, he growled. Same playbook. Make the truth teller look like the liar. Maya's jaw tightened. They're fast. Too fast. They had this ready. On the screen, a talking head quoted anonymous department sources, suggesting Maya had planted evidence to frame her own colleagues. Another segment showed blurred photos of her leaving Ava's apartment, spun as collusion with a biased reporter. It was a coordinated strike. Plan B had begun. The next morning, Jason Miller walked into the precinct and felt the weight of stares. Conversation stopped when he passed. A fellow officer muttered loud enough for him to hear, "Rookie wants to be a hero, ends up a traitor." Jason swallowed hard, forcing himself not to react. He took his locker seat, hands trembling, until Maya appeared in the doorway. Her presence, calm but firm, steadied him. "Don't listen," she said quietly. "They want us rattled. That's the point." Jason's voice cracked. "What if people believe them?" "They will," Maya admitted. "For a while. But lies burn hot and fast. Truth lasts longer if we keep pushing it forward." Jason nodded, but doubt still haunted his eyes. Meanwhile, Ava Ramirez faced her own storm. Her editor called her into the office, voice tight with worry. "They're saying you fabricated sources," he said. "City Hall's threatening lawsuits. Advertisers are nervous. If we don't walk this back." "I'm not walking anything back," Ava snapped. "The files are real. The evidence is real. You saw the ferryman with your own eyes." Her editor sighed. "I know. But the people who cut the checks don't care what's real. They care about pressure. And right now you're radioactive." Ava stormed out, fury boiling. She called Maya the moment she hit the street. "They're trying to erase me. If I lose my platform, everything we've done, everything we risked goes dark." Maya's reply was calm but fierce. "Then we build our own platform. If they shut the doors, we kick them open from the outside." That evening, Reverend Price gathered them in the church again. The sanctuary was empty, save for the four of them around the pulpit. The Liberty Bell files rested on the altar like scripture waiting to be read aloud again. "They want you discredited," the Reverend said. "They're afraid of your voices, so they try to poison the ears listening." Nathan Cole, still pale and restless, paced nearby. "They'll win. They always do. Public opinion swings like a weather vane. Once people think you're tainted, it doesn't matter what proof you show them. They'll call it fake. They'll call you fake." Reverend Price's voice cut through the despair. "Faith is believing in what you cannot yet see. The same is true of truth. You keep showing it, louder each time, until no one can look away." Maya leaned against the pew, exhaustion in her bones but fire in her eyes. "They've turned this city against us before. They'll do it again. But they don't understand something. They've already lost their shadows. The ferryman isn't a myth anymore. He's flesh and blood, caught on camera, and sitting in a cell. That alone cracks their armor." Ava slammed her notebook shut. "Then we make our next move bigger. Not just leaks, not just files. We go national. Broadcast, testimony, live, with Cole and Miller and Brooks all in one frame. No edits, no spin, straight from our mouths to the people's ears." Jason paled. "National, that paints a target on all of us." Maya met his gaze. "The target's already there. The only question is whether we let them shoot us in silence or make them fire in front of the whole world." That night, the ferryman's cell door creaked open. A guard, face hidden under a hood, whispered 2 words. Walk. Now. For the first time since his capture, the ferryman smiled. By morning, news broke that the infamous assassin had escaped federal custody. For Maya, Ava, Jason, and Reverend Price, the message was clear. Plan B wasn't just about smears and doubt. It was about unleashing the shadow once more. The news of the ferryman's escape spread through Philadelphia like smoke in a windstorm. Every channel carried the story, but none had answers. How did the most notorious contract killer in the city simply walk out of federal custody? Officials muttered about internal breaches and pending investigation, but Maya Brooks knew better. Someone had opened the door. That night, Maya parked 2 blocks from Ava's apartment, walking the last stretch under dim street lamps. She carried the Liberty Bell files on a secure drive in her jacket. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she reached Ava's door, she noticed the lock had been tampered with. "Ava?" she called softly, pushing inside. The apartment was dark, papers scattered, a laptop knocked to the floor. Ava appeared from the kitchen, pale but unhurt, clutching a baseball bat. Relief flooded her face when she saw Maya. "They were here," Ava whispered. 2 men. I heard them outside. They didn't break in, not all the way. Just tested the lock, like they wanted me to know." Maya's jaw tightened. "Ferryman," Ava nodded. "He's back on the hunt, and they're letting him." The next morning, Maya convened the group in the Reverend's church. Jason arrived first, his uniform disheveled, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "They're watching me," he said, voice trembling. 2 unmarked cars followed me all night. I parked in 3 different lots, circled twice, and they were still there. "They want you scared," Maya replied. "Fear makes people sloppy. Don't give them that satisfaction." Reverend Price joined them, setting down a tray of coffee and bread. His calm presence steadied the room. "If the ferryman is free, then time runs short. You must act before he strikes again." Nathan Cole sat hunched in a corner, nerves fraying. "You don't understand. You can't stop him. I've seen what he does. If he's free, we're all already dead." Maya's voice cut sharp. "Not this time. Not while I'm standing." The plan for the national broadcast solidified. Ava reached out to a network contact willing to stream testimony live, unedited. The broadcast was set for 48 hours later in a secured studio downtown. But security was a thin blanket against the storm bearing down on them. That night, Jason left his mother's house after dinner, promising her he'd be fine. But as he turned down the block, headlights flared behind him. A black SUV roared forward, ramming his car. Metal shrieked, glass shattered. Jason fought the wheel, heart hammering, as the SUV struck again. He spun into a guardrail, airbag exploding against his chest. Dazed, he scrambled free, drawing his service pistol with shaking hands. The SUV idled 20 yards away, engine growling. For a moment, he thought they would finish him. Then the driver's window rolled down. A silhouette tilted its head slowly. The ferryman. Jason froze, weapon trembling. But the assassin didn't fire. He simply raised a gloved hand, pointing directly at Jason, then tapping his own wrist like a clock counting down. Then the SUV screeched away into the night. Jason staggered, chest heaving. The message was clear. Time was running out. When Jason told the others, Maya clenched her fists. "He's taunting us. He wants us rattled before the broadcast. He's telling us he can reach us anytime he wants." "And he's right," Ava said quietly. "He could have killed Jason, but he didn't, which means he wants us alive until the right moment." Reverend Price crossed himself. "The wolf circles the flock before it strikes." Nathan buried his face in his hands. "We shouldn't do this. You don't understand who we're up against. If the ferryman doesn't finish us, the people who hired him will." Maya turned on him, eyes blazing. "And if we stay quiet, then they win without lifting another finger. I won't let that happen." The day before the broadcast, Maya visited her father. Harold Brooks sat on the porch with a blanket over his knees, watching the street with the weariness of a man who'd seen too much. "You look tired," he said. "Because I am," Maya replied. She told him everything. The escape, the threats, the plan. He listened in silence, then leaned forward, gripping her hand. "I tried once. I failed. They buried me because I stood alone. But you're not alone, Maya. You've got a rookie with more guts than sense, a reporter who won't back down, and a pastor with God in his lungs. That's stronger than any badge. Maya felt her throat tighten. What if it's not enough? Then you go down fighting, Harold said softly, and you make sure the whole world sees who swung the first punch. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, service weapon laid out, the Liberty Bell files drive beside it. She thought of Jason's terrified face, Ava's determination, Reverend Price's unwavering faith. And she thought of the ferryman, head tilted, eyes empty, waiting for the right moment. She whispered to herself, steadying her breath. Justice doesn't choose sides. Justice chooses truth. Outside, in the shadows across the street, the ferryman stood silently, watching her window, smoke curling from the cigarette in his hand. The countdown had begun. The morning of the broadcast arrived gray and damp, rain streaking the windows of the downtown studio. Philadelphia seemed to hold its breath. Maya Brooks walked through the lobby with her bag clutched tight, the Liberty Bell files secure inside. Jason Miller followed close behind, his uniform freshly pressed but his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Ava Ramirez strode ahead, her notebook tucked under one arm, determination etched on her face. Reverend Price brought up the rear, calm as ever, murmuring a prayer beneath his breath. Inside, the studio buzzed with nervous energy. Technicians adjusted cameras, checked sound levels, and whispered about the unusual tension hanging in the air. The producer, a wiry man with a headset, ushered them toward the prep room. We're live in 30 minutes, he said. Once we start, there's no stopping. Understand? Maya nodded. That's the point. While the group prepared, outside the building, a black SUV idled in the drizzle. Inside sat the ferryman, his head tilted as he watched the entrance, cigarette smoke curling from his lips. The rain spattered against the windshield, but his eyes never blinked. He was patient. He didn't need to storm the doors. The people who hired him had already arranged the distractions. His task was simple: make sure the broadcast never finished. In the green room, Jason paced, running through his testimony under his breath. I saw the shot. It wasn't us. Someone wanted Cole dead. I swear that on my badge. His hands trembled. Reverend Price stopped him, resting a steady hand on his shoulder. Breathe, son. Courage is not the absence of shaking hands. It's speaking while they shake. Jason exhaled slowly, nodding. Yes, sir. Ava checked her phone, scanning the stream of threats still pouring into her inbox. Anonymous numbers, faceless accounts. Liar. Fraud. Tonight you're finished. She silenced the phone, muttering, Let them watch. They'll choke on the truth. Maya sat in the corner, cleaning her service weapon with deliberate care. She could feel the storm pressing closer. Every instinct screamed that Ferryman was near. 10 minutes before airtime, the lights in the building flickered. A technician cursed, tapping his headset. We're getting interference. Backup generator's fine, but something's jamming the signal. Ava's eyes narrowed. They're trying to cut us off. Maya stood. Switch to the redundancies. Satellite uplink. Direct stream to multiple platforms. They can't shut them all down. The producer wiped sweat from his brow. We'll try, but if they've got people inside. A loud crash cut him off. Glass shattered in the lobby. Shouts echoed through the hall. Maya drew her weapon instantly. He's here. Chaos erupted as security scrambled. Through the rain-streaked glass, the ferryman stepped into the lobby, calm as a ghost. His peacoat dripped water, his knit cap low, his suppressed pistol already in hand. People screamed and ducked behind desks. The assassin moved with eerie calm, firing once to shatter the security camera, then advancing through the hall. Maya shouted, Lock the studio doors. Get the feed live now. Howard. Jason moved to cover Nathan Cole, who had been brought along under guard to testify. The fugitive turned whistleblower was pale as death, clutching the drive of backup files to his chest. Reverend Price planted himself near the doorway, his frame a shield as he called out, This is a house of truth now. You will not silence it. The ferryman reached the corridor outside the green room. Maya stepped into view, weapon raised. The sight of her didn't startle him. His head tilted in that familiar, unnerving way. You should have stayed in the dark, he said quietly, his voice carrying even through the rain pounding on the roof. Truth belongs in the light, Maya answered. Their weapons barked almost simultaneously. Bullets slammed into the walls, sparks flying from metal fixtures. The building shook with the echoes. Ava dragged Jason and Nathan toward the studio. Go! Get him on air now. Inside the studio, cameras rolled, the red, live light glowing. Ava shoved Nathan into the chair at the desk. Jason stood behind him, pale but steady, while Ava signaled the crew to stream everything. This is Nathan Cole, she said, voice firm, and this is the truth they've tried to bury. The feed carried his words out to the nation, even as gunfire rattled in the hall outside. Maya and the ferryman clashed hand to hand when their weapons ran dry. His strength was brutal, mechanical, every strike aimed to kill. Her wounded shoulder screamed, but she refused to yield. She slammed him into the wall, grabbed at his wrist, fought for control of his blade. You can't stop the river, he hissed, echoing the words he'd spoken in the church. Then I'll damn it, she spat back, driving her elbow into his jaw. The blade clattered free. He staggered, then lunged again. In the studio, Nathan Cole's voice cracked but carried. These are the files. These are the names, officers, captains, contractors, all tied to Keystone Protective, all tied to payouts for silence and blood. Jason stepped forward, raising his badge. And I swear, as an officer of this city, I saw with my own eyes the ferryman tried to kill him. Tried to kill us all. This is real. The cameras caught everything. The people watching couldn't look away. Finally, Maya slammed the ferryman against the control room door, pinning him with every ounce of strength left in her. Jason burst into the hall, weapon drawn. Don't move, the rookie shouted, voice shaking but loud. The ferryman froze, eyes darting between them. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. And then, outside the building, sirens wailed. The feds had arrived. The broadcast ended only when the studio power finally cut, but by then, it was too late for the conspirators. Millions had seen, millions had heard. The Liberty Bell files were out. Maya stood over the subdued assassin, her breath ragged, her shoulder bleeding again. Jason lowered his weapon, relief and terror in his eyes. Ava appeared in the doorway, notebook still clutched like a sword. Reverend Price followed, calm amid the chaos, whispering, "The truth is free now." Hem. For once, Maya allowed herself to believe him. The broadcast sent shockwaves through the city. By dawn the next day, Philadelphia was a city split in two. On one side were the crowds who rallied outside the courthouse, waving signs that read, "Justice for Philly," and "Clean the Force." They had seen Nathan Cole's testimony, Jason Miller's badge held high, Maya Brooks bleeding but unbroken. For them, the Liberty Bell files were proof that truth could still rise. On the other side were the skeptics and the powerful who had reason to deny. Commentators flooded the airwaves with doubt. Staged, fabricated, convenient editing. They called Maya reckless, a cop with a grudge. They painted Ava as a radical journalist with an agenda. And through it all, the ferryman sat in federal custody again, silent as stone, his faint smile suggesting he knew something none of them did. Maya left the hospital against doctors' orders, her shoulder stitched and burning. She refused to stay in bed while the city burned with half-truths and propaganda. Jason met her outside, uniform wrinkled, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "They're saying internal affairs will push for your suspension," he told her. "They're saying I'll be reassigned to traffic duty. They want us out of the way." Maya adjusted her coat, ignoring the pain. "Then we stay louder than their lies." Jason hesitated, voice cracking. "What if they take everything from us? My badge, your career, Ava's paper, what if all we've done just gets buried again?" Maya looked him in the eye. "Then we don't fight for badges or papers, we fight for the truth itself. That's bigger than careers, bigger than us." In her newsroom, Ava was told to take a leave of absence. She argued, shouted, slammed her notebook on the editor's desk, but the decision was final. Out on the sidewalk, rain dripping from the brim of her coat, she called Maya. "They've cut me loose. Said my reporting compromised the paper's credibility. They want me gone before advertisers walk." "Then you're free," Maya replied. "You don't need their masthead anymore. You've got the story, and the story has you." For the first time in days, Ava laughed a short, sharp sound. "Guess I'm freelance again. Just me, my notebook, and a city trying to eat me alive. Reverend Price kept his church open day and night, offering sanctuary to protesters, reporters, even frightened officers who didn't know which side to trust. His sermons grew bolder, carried on live streams, calling out corruption with scripture and steel. But with the attention came threats. Graffiti scrawled on the church doors, false prophet. A brick hurled through the stained glass one night, shattering a century, old window into shards. When Maya came to see him, she found him sweeping glass from the floor. "You should lay low," she told him. He straightened, eyes unwavering. "If the shepherd hides, the wolves eat freely. I'll stand where I've always stood." Maya felt something tighten in her chest, a mix of pride and dread. "Then I'll stand with you." Meanwhile, Nathan Cole lived under guard, but fear never left his eyes. In a quiet moment, he confessed to Maya, "The files, they're only part of it. There's more. Paper trails, bank accounts overseas, names that never made it into the folders. I kept them hidden, in case the first set wasn't enough." Maya's pulse quickened. "Where?" "A storage unit," he whispered, "under another name. But if they know I'm alive, they'll be hunting for it too." She gripped his shoulder. "Then we get there first." That night, the news broke again. The captain whose death had been ruled a suicide. The coroner reversed the finding. Evidence suggested tampering, gunpowder residue missing, angles inconsistent. The whispers spread. Murder, not suicide. The city boiled. Protests swelled. Police lines clashed with citizens demanding answers. The mayor gave a carefully worded statement about letting the investigation run its course. Maya stood in her father's kitchen, watching the coverage with him. Harold Brooks shook his head. "They'll burn the city down before they let the truth walk free." Maya clenched her jaw. "Then we give the people something worth burning for." But the deeper they pushed, the darker the pushback became. A late-night broadcast aired leaked footage of Maya in the church, edited to make it appear as though she had staged the ferryman's arrest. Ava was accused of fabricating emails. Jason's personnel file, once spotless, suddenly showed false disciplinary notes. Plan B had shifted into overdrive. They weren't just trying to discredit them anymore. They were trying to erase them. Still, in the quiet of the church basement, the four of them gathered once more. Papers spread across the table, maps, names, accounts. Nathan's storage unit key gleamed in the center like a talisman. "This is it," Maya said, voice steady. "We go after the rest. The root. If we can expose the whole network, they won't have shadows left to hide in." Ava leaned forward. "And if we don't make it?" Maya looked at each of them, Jason's young, scared eyes, Ava's fierce determination, the Reverend's calm faith, Nathan's trembling hands. "Then at least we'll fall with the truth in daylight," she said. Silence filled the room, heavy but resolute. They all understood. The ferryman was free, the city was split, the network was striking harder than ever, but they weren't turning back. The next move would decide everything. The night was sharp and clear when Maya Brooks pulled the cruiser into the shadow of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The Delaware River churned nearby, dark and restless under the moonlight. Nathan Cole sat in the back seat, pale and sweating, clutching the key to the storage unit. Jason Miller and Ava Ramirez followed in a second car, headlights off until they rolled to a stop. Reverend Price had insisted on coming too, standing tall even in the biting cold. "This is it," Nathan whispered. "The rest of the files, if they're still here." Maya scanned the lot, her instincts humming. Too quiet, too open, the kind of place predators liked. They moved quickly across the cracked asphalt. The storage unit was small, tucked at the far end of the row. Nathan's hands shook as he slid the key into the lock and pushed the door open. Inside sat a single steel trunk, dust clinging to its edges. Ava knelt and flipped it open. Inside lay stacks of hard drives, folders stuffed with contracts, photographs of handshakes between men in uniform and men in expensive suits. Proof enough to bury not just a precinct, but a city's worth of rot. Jason exhaled. This could change everything. Before Maya could answer, a voice cut through the night. Calm. Icy. Or end everything. The ferryman stepped from the shadows, peacoat glinting faintly in the moonlight, pistol steady in his hand. His head tilted that familiar way, the gesture of a predator savoring the moment. "You've run your course," he said, Hand it over. Walk away. Live. Maya stepped in front of the group, her weapon drawn, eyes locked on his. We don't walk away from the truth. For a heartbeat, time froze the files, the gun, the assassin, all balanced on the edge of silence. Then it shattered. The ferryman fired first. The shot cracked, sparking off the steel trunk. Maya returned fire, diving for cover. Jason moved to shield Nathan, dragging him behind a concrete pillar. Ava clutched the hard drives to her chest, crouching low. Reverend Price planted himself in the open, arms spread wide, shouting, "You will not kill the truth tonight." The ferryman hesitated just long enough. Maya rose, pain burning through her shoulder, and squeezed off 2 rounds. One struck his side, driving him back. He staggered but didn't fall, his smile a grim slash in the dark. "You can't dam the river," he hissed. "Watch me," Maya answered and fired again. The bullet tore through his chest. This time the ferryman dropped, his pistol clattering to the concrete. His head tilted one final time before his body went still. Silence settled heavy, broken only by the ragged breaths of the living. Jason lowered his weapon, hands shaking. Is it over?" Maya approached the body, eyes hard. For him, yes. For the people he worked for, no. She turned to Ava. "Get the files out. Tonight. Everywhere. Before they can bury this too." Ava nodded, already clutching the drives like holy scripture. Reverend Price bent over the fallen assassin, whispering a prayer for a soul twisted too far from redemption. Then he looked at Maya, his eyes firm. "You stood in the storm and did not bend. That's enough." But Maya shook her head. "It's not enough until the truth outlives the lies." By dawn, the Liberty Bell files, every folder, every drive were online. News outlets from coast to coast ran the story. The names were undeniable. Bank accounts, signatures, photographs. The network had no shadows left. Protests swelled into celebration. Indictments followed within days. The captain's suicide was reopened as homicide. Keystone Protective shuttered overnight. The machine had been cracked wide open. Maya faced suspension. Jason a mountain of scrutiny. Ava the loss of her newsroom. Reverend Price, a church scarred by threats. Nathan Cole vanished into witness protection, his name forever tangled with the truth he had carried. But in the quiet moments after the storm, as Maya stood on the steps of her father's row house, Harold Brooks came beside her. The old man looked at her with tired eyes and a proud smile. "You finished what I couldn't," he said softly. "You carried the truth further than they could bury it." Maya looked out at the city skyline, the Liberty Bell itself somewhere beyond the haze, cracked but still ringing. "Justice doesn't choose sides," she said quietly. "Justice chooses truth, and the truth is still standing." Her father squeezed her hand. "Then so are you." And for the first time in years, Maya allowed herself to breathe deep, the weight lifting not gone, never gone but lighter, because she no longer carried it alone. My dear friends, if you've stayed with me until the very last moments, surely your heart has gone through a whirlwind of emotions, surprise, anger, compassion, even a lump in your throat at the choice made by the black female police officer. What do you think about her action? Was it admirable courage or a risky recklessness? If you were in her place, what would you do? Leave your comment below. If you believe that justice must be protected by the truth, press 1. If you feel there are still mysteries left unsolved, press 0. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you too will always stand on the side of justice, even though the path to the truth is never easy.